All right. Ecclesiastes chapter 2. Now, I'm going to tell you something. I got home last night and I sat down. We were watching the election results roll in. I was like, I'm just gonna watch for a little while, and then the next thing I know, it was 3:30 in the morning, and it was getting real. It was getting interesting, so I couldn't turn it off. I couldn't go to sleep. And then finally, enough got called where I felt okay about going to sleep. And then I woke up this morning to be at the school. And so I'm telling you that because if I slur my words tonight, it's because I'm tired. All right, there wasn't anything special in my hot dog sauce. All right, nothing like that. All right, so just bear with me. If I get a little fast, sometimes when I'm real tired, I start talking real fast. So just someone tell me to put on the brakes. All right. Ecclesiastes chapter 2. We're going to finish up chapter 2 tonight, looking at work. And so I want you to, and this is not hard for a lot of people to imagine, but I want you to imagine just for a second, I want you to think about someone who spends their entire life and they work really hard, right? Um, they not only work hard, but they're good at what they do. And as they work their way up the ladder. They get to exactly where they want to be in the company and in their life, and usually somewhere around that time, it becomes a point where you're kind of at the pinnacle of it all, and you're at the place where you're going to retire, and you can retire comfortably, and you retire and you sit back and you think about all the stuff that you've amassed, all the things that you have, and you start to wonder, you start to think about what's going to happen to all this when I'm gone. I think about when Rachel and I moved up here, and I thought, man, we have so much stuff, right? You just imagine when because we're going to know when our time on earth is kind of winding down. For those of us who God blesses with old age, we know as we get older, we're headed that direction, and so the older we get, we come to terms with the reality that the Lord could call us home at any minute. We should be ready for that anyway, because He could do that even when we're young. But you sit around and you think, man, we have all of this stuff, and what's going to happen to it when we're gone? In fact, maybe even more than that, with all this effort that I put into accumulating this stuff, does it even really matter? I mean, yeah, you want to have a nice house, you want to have a nice car, you want to have nice things, but think about what it takes to accumulate all of that stuff. And Solomon, as he's gotten older and he's writing Ecclesiastes, he's looking around at what we talked about last week. He's looking around at these palaces and gardens, these incredible wonders of the world that he's built, the temple, right? That he's constructed for the Lord. He's done all these things. He has all this stuff, this wealth, all these other other luxuries in his life, wives and concubine, and he's looking around at all that stuff, and as he's looking around, he starts to contemplate what it took, what time and effort and all of those things, what it actually took, boots on the ground, for him to accumulate all that he had. And he gets to looking into that question, and he says, what's the point of all this work, of all this striving, if I can't take any of this stuff with me? I've said kind of before in a joking way, you never see, people have said it long before me, but you never see a hearse with a U-Haul, right? You're not, you know, when they lower you into the ground or put you in the tomb or spread your ashes, it's not like, you know, it's not like they put all your stuff with you, right? And so Solomon, when he's asking this question, he's asking a question that is on the hearts of a lot of people, whether they say it out loud or not. If I can find meaning and purpose in my work, then that must mean that I'm in a good spot. But what Solomon realizes is that he can be in a good spot and still not have met that need of finding purpose. So he worked. He got all the benefits of that work. And like everything else he's talked about, he's like, man, I'm still empty. There's still, when I lay my head down at night, there's still a void in my life. And on Sunday morning, I talked about the kids building a sandcastle, right? I may have been, I don't remember which Sunday, but you have the kid who spends all that time making this incredible artistic sandcastle, and then you have the kid who's kind of kicking the sand into a pile, right? But at the end of the day, the result is the same, right? The tide rolls in and it just wipes it away. And for Solomon, looking at his work, that's the way he's viewing work. He's put all of this time and effort and energy into doing all of this stuff, into doing all of this work, and just as quickly as he gets everything and amasses all this wealth and all this stuff as a result of his work, there comes death. Death is knocking on the door, right? And his life is passed by. And I think what we have to do when we look at a passage like this and consider work and what it means to work, I think we do have to ask questions about what does it mean for us to work in a way that honors the Lord. I think we should work hard. I think we should be diligent in our work. I think all of those things are true. But I guess the big thing that Solomon is going to get into is there's a difference between working and toiling and striving just for blessing on this plane right under the sun versus working and striving and doing things that have eternal significance. And that doesn't mean, I'm not talking about being a pastor, I'm talking about being a teacher, working in finance, working at the Dollar General, whatever you do for a living. All of those things are opportunities for you to do them in a way that has eternal significance by seeking the glory and honor of God in doing them. And so Solomon is going to look at these pursuits, this work, and he's going to come to the conclusion, just in case you were wondering, I doubt you were because he's a pretty pessimistic guy, but Solomon comes to the conclusion that ultimately, when we're looking at life from this sort of earthly plane under the sun, it for him, it really is divorced from the eternal aspect of things. Everything is just empty. It seems pointless. And he's going to use some illustrations to kind of look to really show us that tonight in the text. I think what we'll see is that real meaning isn't found in what we have. Solomon's going to tell us, finally, he's going to tell us, for the first time, he's going to look to God tonight. This is Ecclesiastes chapter 2, and it begins in verse 18. Again, pessimistic kind of guy when you're looking at it from this earthly plane. Welcome to the world. Saw a lot of liberals on TikTok today who have a very pessimistic outlook on things. And they use this word that I'm about to use. I hated all my toil in which I toil under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to the man who will come after me. And who knows whether he will be wise or a fool. Yet he will be master of all for which I toiled and used my wisdom under the sun. This also is vanity. So I turned about and gave my heart up to despair over all the toil of my labors under the sun, because sometimes a person who has toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skill must leave everything to be enjoyed by someone who did not toil for it. This also is vanity and a great evil. What is a man from all the toil and striving of his heart with which he toils beneath the sun? For all his days are full of sorrow, and his work is a vexation. Even in the night his heart does not rest. This also is vanity. There's nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God. For apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? For to the one who pleases him, God has given wisdom and knowledge and joy, but to the sinner, He's given the business of gathering and collecting only to give to the one who pleases God. This also is vanity and a striving after the wind. So he starts off with, and it's literally a statement and I wasn't joking when I said about TikTok and those videos, that literally people saying, man, I put in all this work and I hated it. You want to know why? Because you put in all the work, and they put all this time and energy, and their candidate didn't win. They put in work, and the end result was not what they wanted. That's what Solomon is saying right here. I put in all of this work, man. I labored. It was hard work. I did all of that. I had all of these achievements, right? And at the end of the day, it was under the sun, and it led me to a place where I hated it. I hated it. There's despair and resentment. Even though he worked and he has everything he wants. He's done it all. He has everything he wants. And as he sits back and looks at this, he says, man, in my heart, I hate this. I hate that I put all of this effort and work and time into working to amass all of this stuff, and still, there's an emptiness about it. The fact that no matter how much he achieved, death is going to strip it away from him. Again, I told you for the last couple of weeks, right? We can't escape that reality. We're all headed in the same direction, right? We're all headed. All of us are going to die, if the Lord doesn't come back before then, which I'm fine with that too. But we're all headed in that same direction. And for Solomon, he says, man, my work, when I look at my work, it just feels empty. It feels like it's meaningless. Because I don't even get to fully enjoy the fruits of it, right? I mean, ideally, it would be awesome if you worked from age 20 to age 30 and then you retired at age 30 and enjoyed the rest of your existence on this earth. But what's true of most people? You work the majority of your life. And by the time you get to retire, there are things that you can't do because you're limited by your body, your age, or whatever, right? And that's where Solomon's at, man. He gets there, he says, I did all of this and I have the fruit, but I don't even get to enjoy the fruit forever. Right? I don't even get to control the future. Right? I wanted to leave a legacy. But he says, man, my legacy's not even secure. I'm the king. And this is true. If you know anything about Solomon, his legacy was not secure because his son was a train wreck. Right? His son did not have the wisdom of Solomon. And everything that Solomon had, for the most part, as he took over and blew it. The kingdom gets divided, and things go really bad. And Solomon doesn't know that's going to happen yet, but because the Lord is speaking through him, through the Spirit of God, he's speaking prophetically about this. That when he's considering all of his work, all of his labor on this earthly plane under the sun, right? He says, man, it's just not worthwhile when you look at it in light of eternity. Seeing that I must leave it to the man who will come after me. The word must here, it's inevitability. It's going to happen. Someone is going to take over my stuff, right? In fact, in America, the greatest country in the world, you pay taxes all of your life. You pay taxes on everything you buy. And then when you die, they tax you again because you died. Right? But all of that stuff is going to someone. If not your relative, it goes to the state. So they can make money off of you. Right? And Solomon is realizing that all of his work, all of his wisdom, all of his wealth is eventually going to be passed on to another person, and there's no assurance. Listen, I've dealt with enough death and loss in people's lives to know that there's a period of tragic mourning, and then if someone has any legacy to leave behind, there comes a point where there's going to be a reading of the will, and usually that's when things go sideways. And guess what? You're not there. There's nothing you can do about it. Right? And if you don't leave a will or something like that, then there's really nothing you can do about it, and that really turns into chaos. But for Solomon, he wants to leave a legacy, but what he's recognizing here is there's a burden in leaving a legacy. In fact, I'm going to say this. I know it's not going to hurt anybody's feelings in this room, but someone in the ethos out there on the interweb, they may get offended by this. But the truth of the matter is, what the position that he's coming from is, I worked hard all of my life for this stuff. And everything that I work for, I enjoy for this very limited time. And when I die, it's going to go to someone who hasn't worked for it, by and large. Now, what does that look like in the world? Well, it turns people into entitled brats. Right? Because they've never had to work for anything in their life, but they inherit this wealth, this legacy, and so they think that they've done something special. Right? But you can take that and handle it one of two ways. Either you can take that legacy and build on that legacy, or you can take that legacy and blow it. And there are plenty of people who do both. But from Solomon's perspective, he says, man, there's no amount of wisdom or effort that I can put forth in this situation from an earthly perspective. There's nothing that I can do to ensure that the person who's going to take over my legacy is going to handle it like I would handle it. Right? It's kind of like no one handles your money like you handle your money. Right? If you have kids, you especially know this. Right? You spend money one way because you work for it. If you have younger kids, they spend money, right, like you're their rich aunt, right, who never runs out of money. They always want money for something. They don't understand how it works. But Solomon does. And he says that, man, how do I know they're going to respect all that I've done? All the work that's been put into this. The prodigal son, man, how do you know that they're not going to go and immediately waste it? Solomon says, you don't. You don't. You have no control. And I think for us, that should lead us to ask questions in our own life, like what am I investing in that's going to last? Am I going to hold on tightly to the material things of this world, or am I going to focus my life on those things that have lasting value? Because your material things, they're gonna run out, right? You leave money and property and things like that to kids, and they're going to spend it on something. They're going to use it for something, like more than likely. And for Solomon, this is again prophetic. He doesn't know that his son is going to be a fool, but he says, and who knows whether that person who's going to receive my inheritance is going to be wise or a fool. There's no way of knowing if everything that I've worked for is going to someone careful and capable or someone who's careless and wasteful. And for him, that frustrates him. Because remember, this is not just Joe Schmo, right? It's not like this guy is it's not like he's retiring from McDonald's, right? As a cashier at McDonald's. He's not retiring. He's the king of Israel. Right, the conqueror of nations, the builder of the temple. Like he's 300 wives and 700 concubines and castles and palaces and wealth beyond all recognition. It's not just that he's giving his legacy away. He understands the weight, the earthly weight of the inheritance that he's leaving. And he says, man, it's a hard pill for me to swallow to think that this could go to a fool. Maybe you have someone in your family like that, right? I'm going to be honest with you. I think of my grandparents, and, they worked hard all of their life. And, one of the things I told them is, I don't want anything. I have no desire for them to leave me anything, because I didn't do anything for it. I didn't work for it. I'm working to build my own self and my own family, but I didn't work for it. So you know what that frees me to do? To not get mad and start saying, well, this is mine and this is mine, because it's not. Because it's their legacy. And they're allowed to do with it what they want. And I don't get mad about it. And I won't get mad about it. But for Solomon, he says that's not how people operate mostly in the world. Right? They see everything that the previous generations of their family have done, and really this is manifest in a lot of different ways, but it's manifest in that people think, I deserve this. Right? I deserve this. I deserve this inheritance. But Solomon says, man, the problem is the limitations that human wisdom has when it comes to that inheritance. Right? Because what if you make so-and-so the executor of your estate? But then you pass away and something happens to them. And then all of a sudden the cousin that every time they come to the family reunion, everyone prays they have to leave early, is now in charge of all of that. And it becomes a whole nother thing, right? It becomes a mess because of the limitations of human wisdom. And again, this is historically and prophetically true in Solomon's life, when his son Rehoboam is just a buffoon. He makes just about every unwise decision that you can make, and the kingdom is divided. And literally pretty much everything that Solomon built is null and void. And I think for us, when we look at these sorts of things, especially in wisdom literature like Ecclesiastes, it should drive us to start asking questions. Not just, are we striving and are we leaving a legacy that has eternal significance? Because I do think that leaving a legacy, even, working hard and having things, I think those things are important too. I do. And Solomon's going to talk about that we'll talk about that in a minute from his perspective. But I think sometimes we need to recognize what is beneficial to our family and what is not beneficial to our family. Because I think of people in my family who, if they came into a large sum of money, they would probably end up on the side of the road OD'd on something. I mean, that's just a fact, right? I mean, it is what it is. So we have to use wisdom, but in that wisdom, we have to understand that there are limitations, that we're not going to be able to figure everything out. We're not going to be able to answer every single question. But somebody is going to be master over everything that you work for. And Solomon says, they're going to be master over everything I work for, and everything that I use this God-given wisdom to amass under the sun. Didn't matter. It doesn't matter his dedication and his wisdom. It doesn't matter the hard work that he put into it, because he's going to be dead. And so he says, this is vanity. It's a vapor, right? It's havel, right? It's like chasing the wind. It's empty. It's empty. I think the greatest, I don't know what my grandmother and my grandfather my grandfather's still alive on my dad's side. He has dementia. He's in an assisted living facility, but I don't know what they have. But I'll tell you that everything that they could ever give me that would have lasting meaning, they've already given me. They prayed for me. They challenged me when it came to matters of faith. They poured into me truth and wisdom and insight. Right? They made sure that they made sure to call me to make sure I was running after God with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength. That's the sort of legacy they poured into me. When my grandfather dies, I don't. They come out and he could be a bajillionaire. I would never know it. But even again, I don't care because he has literally given me everything that I could ever need. He's the most gentle man that I've ever known, the most godly man that I've ever known. The person in my life who showed me the love of a grandfather, but the love of a father, the love that a man should have for his wife, right? He showed me all those things, and it wasn't even it wasn't like he was doing it intentionally, but he was a believer, and he was leaving a legacy behind, but he was leaving a legacy of lasting meaning. But he worked hard. But that's not what I will remember about him the most. Because that sort of stuff, and I mean the physical stuff that you leave behind, is what Solomon is saying. It's just, it's empty. You think when you open, if you keep money, cash money in your wallet, when you open your wallet and pull a 20 out, do you think, man, I have a lot of good memories attached to this 20? No. You probably just went up to an ATM somewhere and put your card in and took it out of a machine. You probably don't even remember when. I have money in my wallet. I don't even remember. Part of it, I don't even know where it's from, right? There's no memory attached to that. It's literally meaningless. Now, unless you want to buy something. But in the grand scheme of things, that's what, when Solomon is looking at this, he's looking at it from right here. And when he's looking at it, he says, yeah, I can buy stuff, but when that stuff is gone, that stuff is gone. So where do I find that which is lasting? How do I leave that legacy that's lasting? And he says that's the question he's struggling with. And what does he say? And I turned about and gave my heart up to despair. He said, I was trying to figure this out, and I was looking at all of my work and all of this stuff, and it brought me to a place of hopelessness. When I looked at my work, I felt hopeless. Because everything I have, even though it's successful, incredibly successful for him, and impressive by every measure that you can imagine, he says it's meaningless. Because I have no control over it. Because I'm going to die. And a man who had everything you could ever want, including wisdom, wealth, and power, he looks inside and he says, none of this can give me, none of this fulfills that longing of my soul. He said, even when I look around and I know that I have everything, there is a hole in my heart that none of this stuff can fill. And I look at all this work under the sun. And he says here, man, sometimes a person who has toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skill, so it's not just that he's worked, he's put forth incredible effort in what he's done. Right? He's used wisdom and knowledge and skill. He's very specific in the things that he's accomplished. Of course, we see his wisdom manifest in the Scripture and the things that he's done. We see when he lacked that wisdom too, but we see this godly wisdom manifest. We see the knowledge and we see the skill too, and all the things that he built that he just told us about in the verses before. He says, I had discernment. I worked my life with diligence. But despite all of that, there's no guarantee that what I've done here is going to be valued by future generations. I mean, I know I joked about this before, but just think about these people who think that they have a particular, and I'm going to say religious. Some people will call it political, but it's really a religious position where I believe a certain way about the planet, and so I'm going to go around and I'm going to destroy masterpieces of history to make my point. I'm going to destroy all of that. Imagine, just imagine what Da Vinci and those people, incredible things that they created for us. Beautiful, incredible things. And people glue their hands to it, or they paint it, or they cut it, or all that stuff. That's you could see why this would be a tad bit depressing for someone like Solomon, because there's no radical climate activist when Solomon is around, right? But there are other things going on, right? There are other types of people. There are religious zealots who are quite literally crazy, child sacrificing lunatics in sex cults, and that's just true. And you have all of that going on, and so he's like, man, what if my kid gets wrapped up in that and I leave them the legacy of the nation of Israel? And it ends up in that sort of environment. That is crazy. I've used all of this wisdom, all of this skill to create these beautiful, magnificent things, and they will have no value other than what they mean to the person I leave them to. You know, if I had one of those pictures in one of those museums, I would probably treat it better than a child, right? Because it's incredible. Probably not better than a child, but you get the point. You would treat that special. But somebody just coming into your house, you bring a child in your house, what do? They eat Cheetos and they go up and put a Cheeto handprint on it, right? Because they don't value it the same way you do. That's the position that Solomon's coming from. He said, man, I'm gonna work for all this. I'm gonna leave all of this behind, but I'm gonna leave it to someone to be enjoyed by someone who didn't work for it. And listen, if you don't work for something, you treat it differently than things you work for. You know? If you don't believe me, sometime I'll introduce you to my brother, who had multiple cars growing up, right? Because someone bought them for him, and he made foolish decisions in the way that he operated them, right? But you know what? When he had to use his own money to buy cars, you start looking at it a little different, right? It's different when you're living at your parents' house and you crank the AC down to 57 in the summer, right? And they're paying that $15,000 power bill. And then you get your own house and you realize, hey, we can live at 75, because if we go below 70, right, we ain't eating for months probably, right? No. Well, in the way we're living right now, it's probably true, but you know, no one looks at it the same way that you do when you have an investment in it. That's why, listen, this is the way that I operate in the church too. Like, my position is, I'm not sending anybody anywhere for free. You got to have skin in the game, right? It's just like Winter Gym. We're taking the kids to Winter Gym. We're paying part of the ticket from the youth ministry, but they got to pay half, right? Because if not, they'll sign up for it, and then we'll get ready to leave that day, and half of them won't show up because they ain't got no skin in the game. But you know what? For a teenager, when you give $20 and you're going to lose $20, you show up, right? Because that's a lot. Why? Because you have investment in it. Solomon says, man, I'm leaving everything that I work for to someone who they don't have an investment in it. And that's a problem. It's a problem because it's frustrating. Just like the father and the prodigal son, he's frustrated. Now, he welcomes his son home, yes, but there's frustration and disappointment and despair in him as he waits every single day for his son to return. The idea that all the work that he's done, all the wisdom he's put into this, all the care that he's put into it, that it could end up in the hands of someone who just blows it. Man, he says that's, again, vanity. Even says here something different. It's not just vanity, it's a great evil. The entire situation, working hard just to leave it to somebody who doesn't value it, is vanity. It's meaningless. And it's a great evil. Solomon says it's unfair how quickly your memory gets wrapped up in that legacy and how quickly both of them go out the window when you have someone who's not living wisely but living foolishly under the sun. For Solomon, he's realizing over and over again that all the fruit of his labor, it's completely beyond his control. Even though he's the king. And it leaves him disappointed. He said, there's something wrong with this. There's just something wrong about it, he feels. What is a man from all the toil and striving of his heart with which he toils beneath the sun? He says, what do I gain from this? Other than frustration, what's the ultimate reward? What's the purpose for what I'm doing? You know how many times I've asked myself that in jobs that I've had? I mean, I'll be doing something. I'll be earning a paycheck, but I'm like, what is the point of this? I mean, for real. Even when I was doing police work, there were times like, what am I doing here? Like, what is the purpose of me being right here right now? Sometimes it means you just got to go. You just leave because there's not a purpose. But that's really where Solomon is. That's where he's landing at here. If I'm going to work, if I'm going to toil, if I'm going to work hard, if I'm going to do this grueling work, if I'm going to do it from my heart, meaning that if I'm going to put everything into the work that I'm doing, right? If I'm going to do that, if I have drive and ambition, if I'm going to do all of those things, if I'm going to relentlessly pursue what I'm doing so that I'm the best at it, that I'm moving up the chain, I have security, I have purpose, at least somewhat in what I'm doing. I'm doing all of that stuff, right? I'm gaining all of this stuff under the sun, right? Not from a godly, eternal perspective, but I'm amassing the stuff. And Solomon says, yeah, but is your soul satisfied? See, that's where Solomon is going in all this. Is that it doesn't matter how much wisdom you have. It doesn't matter how much understanding you have. It doesn't matter how many wives and concubines you have. It doesn't matter how hard you work, how high you are on the food chain. What he's getting at ultimately is your soul satisfied? And what he's telling us over and over again is if you're looking for the satisfaction of your soul and the fulfillment of your soul in any of these things, it's vanity. It's vanity, right? I think I've said this before, but you know, like Robin Williams, man, and talented, literally has everything in the world, does comedy, but takes his own life. Why? Because he thought, he had the mentality of the world that if I can just do this and this and this, if I can accomplish these things, then it will fulfill the longing of my soul. But when he laid his head down at night, that longing was never fulfilled. And instead of fulfillment and satisfaction, brokenness, lostness, and loneliness ruled in his heart. This is true of a lot of people in the world. And it's what Solomon wants us to see. And he says, for all his days are full of sorrow. And his work is vexation. You can work to try to find purpose and meaning. And all you will do is work. And the longing of your soul will still be unsatisfied. In fact, he says you're going to have sorrow and vexation. You know what that means? It's not only that you're not going to be satisfied, but you're going to have emotional distress. You're going to have frustration. You're going to have anger. You're going to be dissatisfied and you're going to be disappointed when you realize that none of those things are bringing true joy to your heart because you're looking at them from right here in this earthly plane under the sun. You're chasing after the temporary reward. And he says, listen, I want to talk about wisdom. I think this is This is one of the most incredible statements he says in this part. Even in the night, his heart doesn't rest. Solomon says, when I'm done for the day, when I go home and turn on the TV, not really, but when he goes home, in the quietness and the stillness, when he should be resting and taking in the day and finding fulfillment and satisfaction in the fact that he's worked hard and he's accomplished things, he said, even then my heart doesn't rest. You're not going to find peace and rest in what you do, and you're not going to find peace and rest outside of what you do if you're looking at everything from an earthly perspective. How many people do you know that work, and they're always restless? They work all day and then they come home and they can't sit still because there's always something else to do. There's always something else that needs to be done, and they you know somebody who can't relax. You know somebody like that, right? That's the illustration of what Solomon is showing us here. Is that when we try to find our purpose and our meaning in those things, the problem is it doesn't matter if you're at work killing it or you're at home killing it. At the end of the day, it just doesn't fill that longing. And he says this is vanity. It's meaningless, just like vapor. No matter how successful you are, it's empty. It's empty, right? I've told you this before, but listen, when you die, if you're at a job and you may be in a lucrative position at your job, when you die, they're on what's the job site now? Your job is on Indeed.com at 7 a.m. the next morning, maybe 12, maybe midnight the same day you die. He says it's vanity to try to find purpose and meaning and all that because your stuff is not going to last forever. Your memory is not going to last forever either, right? As generations pass. He says it's just that there's nothing, and here's where things change. And it's weird, I know, because he's like the most pessimistic guy on the planet, and he says there's nothing better, right? That's something he's not really talked about. So we already see the language has changed. There's nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his work. Wait a minute. You just said, Solomon, that your work is empty, that it's meaningless, that you're not finding that fulfillment, but then you say there's nothing better for a person than that he should eat, drink, and find enjoyment in his work. So there's striving for success and for wealth. He says there's contentment, but it's not in the fact that you're accumulating stuff. It's that you're learning about and how to appreciate the everyday blessings of life. That's why people pray before meals. Right? Because we want to remind ourselves that we're thankful for what has been provided to us. Solomon says we need to take those things in. We need to have gratitude for the small things in life. We don't need to worship those things. We don't need to find purpose in those things, but we need to find gratitude for them. And here's why. This also I saw is from the hand of God. He says the reason I find enjoyment, and you need to find enjoyment and gratitude in those things, is because those small blessings, the fact that you have something to eat, that you have something to drink, the fact that you can go to work every day and make money to provide for the needs of your family, that is a blessing from God. That's a gift from God. And yes, your effort can bring you wealth and success, but only God can provide you with the joy and satisfaction that comes with that. So see, Solomon is now bringing it together. We're looking at things from an earthly plane, and now we're looking at those things, but we're looking down at those things from a heavenly perspective. Oh, now these things, now this work and the benefits of that work, it's not about amassing possessions, right? It's not about selfish ambition. It's not about making a name for myself. It's about appreciating and having gratitude for what God has done. Because I'm not standing before you because of anything that I've done. All the school that I went through is not because of what I've done. It's because of what God did. What God blessed me with, that opportunity. For apart from Him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? A rhetorical question, right? Solomon says, apart from God, where are you going to find joy apart from God? You can't. God's presence is the essential element of finding joy in this world. And Solomon has learned that without God, even the most successful life is hollow and unfulfilling. Earthly pleasure, incomplete without a relationship with God. I'm not saying you can't achieve great things, but those accomplishments, they lack depth. They lack that satisfaction unless God is blessing them. Listen to what he says. For to the one who pleases him, God has given wisdom and knowledge and joy. For the one who pleases him, for the one who runs after the Lord with all of his heart, soul, mind, and strength, for the one who does what the Lord commands, the one who's obedient, faithfully obedient to God, God has given him wisdom, knowledge, and joy. God is the one who's dispensing the blessing, and he does it to those who are faithful to him. Those who are living a life that pleases God, or attempting to live a life that pleases God, to live in a way that's in line with His will, a life that's marked by humility and obedience and with a real focus on honoring God. That's the key in all of this. To remove the selfish ambition and the platform building and the legacy building and all that, remove that off the table. Not that those things won't exist, but when those things exist in your life and they exist for the glory and honor of God, Solomon says that's how you have satisfaction. Because guess what? In that situation, a guy named Job was in that situation. He had everything and God took it away from him. God did that, right? Satan goes to God, right? And have you considered serving Job? And he takes everything, right? What does Job say? Job says, naked I came into this world, I'm leaving naked. Blessed be the name of the Lord, right? It's not mine anyway. He says, all these kids, all this stuff I've amassed, it never belonged to me. It was all God's anyway. And God gave it to me, and God took it away from me. But blessed be the name of the Lord. Now, Job goes through the highways and the byways, and he's not always that optimistic. He finds himself in some low points, but then God gives him a little on the forehead and gets his mind thinking back the right way, and eventually Job comes back to that same place. And what does God do? God brings all of that back to him, plus some. When we live in faithful obedience to God, God blesses us. Now, I know that we don't like to say those things, but that's just the way it's the way God has established this thing. Whatever you sow, you reap. Right? You sow faithful obedience to God, you reap the blessings of God. That's the way He's established this thing. But it's not just the good things that God brings. God talks about, Solomon talks about, but to the sinner, He's given the business of gathering and collecting. What God has given to the sinner is work that has no eternal meaning. So the sinners out there working, gathering and collecting, they are endlessly pursuing stuff, and yet they have nothing to bring to the table, right? You have people like this in your life. They work, but they ain't never got nothing. That's the way that Solomon describes the sinner here. And what does he say? The sinner, he's given the business of gathering and collecting only to give it to the one who pleases God. God says the sinner's out there doing all of this work, but blessings don't fall on them. Now, common grace falls on them, but the blessings of God, they aren't being poured out on the lost. Now, does that mean that God never does it? I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that those who are lost are not out there living for the glory and honor of God. They're not living in faithful obedience to God. They don't know how, right? So God isn't blessing that. And so what Solomon says here is that that person who's doing that work, God is even using that to bring blessing to the one who is living in faithful obedience. And he says, but at the end of the day, even all of this is also vanity and striving after the wind. Because the sinner is out there just endlessly gathering, endlessly working, endlessly gaining all these possessions, but they have an impossible task because they're chasing after fulfillment and satisfaction, but they can't catch it doing this. It's divorced from the God and the eternal aspect of this. And what Solomon says is if that is you, you're never going to find what you're looking for. You can work all the days of your life 24/7, and you can amass every type of wealth that ever can exist and will exist, but you're not going to be satisfied. Apart from God, you're not going to have fulfillment. I mean, just think about those. Just think of OJ, right? A great football player, accomplished a lot, but think about what happened to his legacy. Apart from the whole, if the glove don't fit, you must have quit. Apart from that part of it, right? I'm talking about his accomplishments in football. I mean, it got auctioned off. Incredible accomplishments end up in boxes in basements somewhere, right? And the only time it gets found is when you got to clean up, right? When you're moving. You find that box of, if you have kids, right? They accomplish great things as children. They win all these trophies and you box them up, and then 45 years later when you move one day, you open a box that has 4 feet of dust on it, and there's all the trophies, right? The world moves on from that moment, right? They accomplish all this stuff, but the world moves on, and all those achievements that were once so important, now you're trying to remember what was happening when they got that. You suddenly wonder and look at all these accomplishments, all these accolades, and say, man, what value did they really bring? Did they bring any lasting value? Now, they may have. If you're a Christian, they should have. But if you're lost, Solomon says they don't. They don't have any lasting value. They're but a memory of a time in the past. For Solomon, he finally gets to the point to say that we have to build our life. We have to look at things from a perspective that is not here, but we're looking at things from a heavenly perspective, understanding that the only thing that brings meaning to life is God. The only thing that brings joy to your life is God. The only thing that brings purpose to your life is God. So you're not going to have any of that without Him. And Solomon's shown us that over and over and over again. He's not done. But that's what he's doing. Showing us the emptiness of the world to show us our need for God. He's trying to help us avoid the heartache he experienced. Right? He's trying to lead us through the maze of life and avoid the dead ends. It only works if we listen. Let me pray for us and be done tonight. Lord, I pray we would hear you. Lord, we would hear the truth of your word. Lord, that meaning and purpose and blessing and joy and peace that surpasses all understanding, and all of those things that we associate with goodness only come when we have a relationship with you. So the world is unhappy. It's a broken place. It's hopeless. And the only way that those things are going to be turned right side up is for the world to experience salvation in you. And that should encourage us as the church to be reminded that we have a mission, that we have a purpose in this world. That is to go out and tell people that the void and the unsatisfaction and the hole that's in their heart, it's not going to be filled by anything in this world. But it can only be filled by a genuine, life-transforming relationship with you. May we be faithful in the proclamation of that message today and every day. We ask these things in Jesus' name.